Hello, I'm divinity enthusiast and truth seeker Trevor Lohsen, coming to you from the dark and cramped basement where I'm hiding from said divinity, and this is About the Gods of the Solar System, a documentary compiling all of the forbidden knowledge I have been able to gather about them. I have spent countless hours researching ancient scrolls and using magic to eavesdrop on some of our gods' conversations. I have unveiled the secrets of the gods, and now I'm going to share them with the public. Here's hoping I don't get smitten. We all know that there exists a divine and a mortal plane. We, the mortals, being the only living beings inhabiting solely this plane. We also know that the gods, the ones who mold and upkeep our plane, inhabit the divine plane, along with other divine creatures. While the exact hierarchy of beings is unknown, we know us to be on the bottom and the gods to be on top, as well as the hierarchy of the gods themselves. The first tier being Dot and Tovish, the higher forces, the rulers of all gods. The second tier being the gods of unpalpable things, and the third tier being the gods of physical phenomena. What I have learned through my research is that the gods, being the ones who shape our universe and our lives and who hold unimaginable power, are terrifying, but also that they are people as well. They really aren't so different from us, if we ignore the fact that they could kill us within 2 seconds if they chose to do so. In this section I will discuss specifically the characteristics of the third tier of gods, as it is the one I have the most information on. From my understanding though, outside of function, the second tier seems to be practically the same anatomy and life cycle wise. A god starts out as a newborn god. What one looks like I do not know, but I believe then to not be sentient. This almost acts as the soul of the god to be. The gods get physical bodies once they are needed to fulfill a duty. Their physical appearance tends to mirror said duty. Not every time a new god is needed a newborn god is awakened, but rather a god that has fulfilled their duty may be reassigned. How newborn gods come to be exactly is way beyond my grasp, but I do know it is not through our understanding of reproduction. As beings that do not sexually reproduce, they do not have sexes either, which may seem confusing because after all, don't we have gods and goddesses? But we actually don't, at least not really. Allegedly, the whole gender thing among the gods came to be once the first mortals appeared on some planet many millennia ago, which was a big deal across the whole universe at the time. They saw how the mortals had different sexes and basically did the thing where people assign a character from a popular show to themselves, to one which they relate the most to, and then most of the gods got in on the fad. Some of them didn't. The gods, being immortal, do not need to sleep, eat, or drink, or really perform any of the bodily functions that we do, but they can if they wish to do so. A god may take a nap or have a snack, although I heard that food is extremely hard to come across and produce in the divine plane. According to our depictions of the gods, though, some of them don't have mouths, so how would they eat? Unlike us, where a lack of facial features just means a lack of facial features, the gods do actually possess all of them, but some are covered. If they need to access a specific one for some reason, they would have to cut their skin. Ouch! Not to worry though, as the gods heal very quickly. If they are unable to, though, a god, despite being immortal, can technically die. Now, it takes a lot to kill a god, and it happens very rarely, which makes it all the more tragic for their comrades. When a god dies, they go back to their original form, a newborn god. The newborn god can then be turned back into a god, but without any of the memories or even personality traits of the former god. So the god is not technically dead, but since the person that the god once was is now gone, they are considered dead, and the new god is considered a new person, even if it is all technically still the same god. But enough about death. Now on to the gods' functions, covering specifically planetary gods. The gods of night and day, usually being the first to arrive to a new planet. God of Night and Day is really just a fancy sounding title, though, as they do much more than that. They control the core and therefore the gravitational pull of the planet, its rotation and, if applicable, atmosphere, but only if it is a rocky planet. They also control the light that comes from the sun and onto the planet, as well as doing the same for the moon. Gods of the land control the hard surfaces of rocky planets, and all other layers of the planet except for the core. Gods of the sea are found everywhere where there is a lot of liquid or supercritical fluid. It's pretty straightforward, they control the fluid. Even if it is technically an ocean, they are still all called gods of the sea. However, the line between fluid, quote unquote, and gas may be blurry on a lot of planets, so some of the duties are shared with gods of atmospheres. Speaking of which, they control the atmosphere on giant planets. Gods of the weather also fall into this category, although they are much rarer to find. They control the weather phenomena in the atmosphere specifically. Now that all that's covered, we can finally get on to the gods. How exciting! Starting off with not a planet, but a dwarf planet, meet Sai and Desmond. Although these two may seem scary at first glance, on account of Desmond's height and size, well, muscles and brass knuckles, they are both very laid back. So laid back, in fact, that they don't really do their jobs. Sai and Desmond are besties, absolutely inseparable, and they spend their time mostly goofing off and doing very stupid things. They can't really take anything seriously. Sai is a brute and pretty empty-headed, oftentimes doing before thinking. While Desmond has more in the brains department, they are so unserious that it basically cancels it out. Desmond and Sai call each other exclusively dude or bro. Desmond's slacking off is made even more problematic by the fact that they are responsible for both Pluto and Charon. In their second pair of arms, they hold strings that are tied to Charon, so they can control its rotation remotely from Pluto. The reason for this is that Charon is about the size of Pluto and is tidally locked to it, so the night and day cycle of Pluto is heavily dependent on Charon's positioning. They are grateful to be able to control it remotely, too, not only because it is easier, but also because that way they can avoid Chai, whom they hate and say is evil. Sai, who has interacted with Chai only a few times, says he doesn't understand why Desmond is so afraid of her, but he hasn't seen her evil side. On Neptune, lots of magic shows are hosted by the illusionist Ilzui, and nobody wants to watch them. The magic tricks range from poorly performed card tricks to disappearing acts to... No, those are the only two categories. Admittedly, Ilzui's tricks aren't very good, but she just can't seem to understand why nobody is interested. She's hyperactive, loud, and very insecure, constantly searching for validation. She hides her face behind a cloth and projects images onto it. Usually she takes on a form similar to this one, but it may vary with conversation or emotion. She insists that she just does it because it's fun, but everybody knows that she just doesn't like the way she looks and tries to hide behind a normal looking form. To keep Izzy from having a complete breakdown, her planet mates Science and Rotan humor her performances, always feigning surprise. Science used to be the solar system's electrician before the restrictions were enforced and his job befell the Pollux. He used to help out wherever there were any problems with magnetic fields. He often doesn't say much, but is a very friendly guy who likes to help out, and is very supportive of his friends. He acts as a fatherly figure to many people, but especially Izzy. Rotan is quite opinionated and always makes sure that everybody knows what he's thinking. Science often berates him for being rude, even though he never does it on purpose. He just can't seem to figure out which thoughts he needs to keep to himself. He has learned to just generally keep his mouth shut around Izzy, though. Thurston is not confined to only one heavenly body, but rather he travels between three, Neptune, Uranus, and Jupiter. Since the rings on those planets are all so faint, they don't really need separate gods, so Thurston handles all of them. Everybody keeps forgetting that he exists, which is the way he prefers it. His form is only visible under direct light, and when he wants to make himself known, he uses his angler. Whether you know it or not, he is there, listening to your conversations. He knows everything about everybody and even chimes into arguments when he feels that it is absolutely necessary to clear a misunderstanding. If you have a question about somebody, Thurston is your guy. If you can find him, that is. Uranus's gods are described by our lovely goddess Donok as a gaggle of weirdos, Yon probably being the most extreme case. He's very strange, always saying out of pocket or nonsensical things, and never actually contributing to anything meaningfully. He never shows any real emotion or opinion, just always has a blank smile on his face. Many have tried to talk to him normally, but have failed. It seems that he just acts this way to get reactions out of people, but no one knows for sure what's going on inside his head. Sevala being his planet mate is definitely not a good thing, as she is very fragile and easily upset. She is anxious and is overwhelmed even by small things. When she is, she will use her head to cover her face and hide from the world. Rataiv, the angry pom-pom man, is very overprotective of Cece and attempts to shield her from everything, often getting violent when somebody upsets her. He probably takes this behavior too far, though, as he always does and says everything for her, effectively suffocating her and not letting her make her own decisions and just letting her anxiety grow. Saturn is the it planet of the solar system. All four of its gods are fashionistas and trendsetters, but none of them would be if it wasn't for Pia. She really is the only thing giving the rest status. She only arrived to Saturn 400 million years ago, but the whole solar system was immediately enamored by her, and the pretty plain and unnoticed Saturn became popular. Everybody is jealous of these guys and wants to be them. They're all generally regarded by others as pretentious pricks that are full of themselves, and the others would be correct, except for Obla. Obla is actually a very kind, caring, and surprisingly humble person, who just somehow got roped into all of this, probably going along with it for fear of being ostracized by their planet mates. Diane is all about shine, and even though Saturn isn't the only planet to rain diamonds, she covers herself in them to stand out and be as sparkly as possible. She often makes passive-aggressive comments on others' appearances. Rosp goes for a more sharp look, focusing more on silhouette rather than details. He doesn't even need to say anything, because even in his silence you can tell how he judges everybody. Though the weight strapped to his ankle isn't a voluntary fashion choice, but something that was placed by Encella of Enceladus as punishment for something. Nobody really knows what he did, but apparently he feels guilty about it. Otherwise, he would just take the weight off and not have to limp. And Sela clearly very much enjoys being a thorn in Rosp's side, and it doesn't seem as if she's going to forgive him anytime soon. I think that it is fair to say that Farah is the ruler of Jupiter, because the other two are pretty much useless. Trisp not by choice, though. Trisp experiences constant nausea that can sometimes even edge on being debilitating. The constant stream of hydrogen pouring from their mouth doesn't really allow them to talk either. They can clear it up if they really need to say something, but it's not a pretty sight to behold. None of this stops Trisp from trying their best, though. They are a confident and assertive person, it's just that some days they are unable to do much. Although their planet mate Ral somehow always manages to give them energy in the form of anger. Ral is very energetic all the time and can't sit still for more than a minute. He constantly runs around, yells, spins and pushes people's buttons, which is his favorite hobby. He has little regard for others' feelings. Thank goodness for Farah, because otherwise nothing on Jupiter would ever get done. She has some serious people skills, in that she knows how to best comfort Trisp, but also when to give them their space, and how to best discipline and keep Ral in check. She really doesn't mind having to do so much work, and even rather enjoys it. Mars, our neighboring planet, is also the home to our neighboring gods Melak and Mile. While Mile is friends with everybody, Melak is friends with nobody. Melak is an introvert and rarely speaks. It's not that she doesn't want to be involved, she just sometimes forgets that it's even an option. She is a passive observer. Mile doesn't think that this is right, so she often encourages Melek to contribute to conversations and tries her best to make her feel included. Even if Melek doesn't always end up socializing, she appreciates Mile's effort and makes sure that she knows it. Mile doesn't only help Melek with her people problems though, but also everybody else. Everybody knows her, everybody loves her, and many resent her at the same time. She's the therapist friend and is annoyingly perfect, never getting angry and always putting others before her. She's very charming and social. In reality, this is all a mask, and she's very insecure and desperate for people's approval. Melek is really the only one who knows the real Mile. Ah, our lovely gods! No amount of praise would be enough. And oh, how secretive they are, how little we know about them. But now I have learned so much. For starters, we all know how the gods love to mess with our regions. Donok, who rules over the region Donora, and its people, loves to mess with the sunlight. Tol, ruler of Otolok, changes the terrain regularly. Remo, ruler of Remorg, changes the tides randomly and drastically. And Wet, ruler of the mysterious and unreachable Wetar, throws extreme weather at its residents. Donok is a god often discussed for the fact that she got her planet, well, banished. In her effort to rebel against the higher forces, she created life, and through it the firstborns and eventually the blueprints to us. For this she is both praised and ridiculed, because we exist because of her, but at the same time our planet is riddled with anomalies because of our banishment. This kind of behavior seems to be on brand for Donok, though, as she is very impulsive and impatient. She often has bad ideas that she will stop at nothing to see through, even if she knows she has gone too far. In her adamancy to always prove that she is always right, lots of bad decisions are made, which she regrets later. She's not a bad person, she never intends to hurt anyone, she just doesn't realize what she's doing in the heat of the moment. Tol is Donok's arch nemesis. Well, I'm being dramatic, but they do seem to argue a lot. Everybody else has learned to be somewhat tolerant of Donok's shenanigans, but Tol just can't stand her. He, of course, does care for her deep down, as she is his planetmate after all. Tol is a very sarcastic person, with a very dry sense of humor, and while he loves to take jabs at people, he always makes sure that he's not actually hurting anyone's feelings. He loves to make self-deprecating jokes as well, only not in the presence of Donok, as she usually turns his humor against him. He might be a little too involved in the lives of his mortals, always watching and listening, knowing all of their drama. Remo is pretty much the leader of the group, being the only one keeping everybody in check, focused and from doing stupid things. He's the voice of reason in most situations, and is pretty much the only one who takes anything seriously. He's usually quite cool and level-headed, but is definitely very prone to anxiety, as he worries a lot for the safety of his planetmates. Without him, Earth would have gone up in flames a long time ago. He basically acts as everybody's mother. Wet stands out in that, for some reason, she speaks another language entirely. Nobody knows how or why this came to be, she was just born this way. She understands what everybody else is saying perfectly fine, but no matter how hard she tries, she just can't speak like everybody else. So to have her be included and be able to talk to her, the Earthlings have come up with symbols for her to communicate through. This way she can pretty much speak normally to her planet mates, however everybody who is not in the know wouldn't be able to understand her. Not that she has anybody else to talk to anymore. Wet is a lover of all things cutesy and feminine, loving making her own dresses and accessories to wear. She loves dancing, but ballet especially, and moves very gracefully in a ballerina-like fashion. Otherwise she is very feisty, not being above using emotional and even occasionally physical violence when she has had enough. She's very assertive and goal-oriented, and knows what she wants. But as long as you stay on her good side, you probably won't get to see her in her angry state, and she will treat you with kindness and respect. Luna, our closest neighbor, is a hopeless romantic. She spends all her time dreaming about her knight in shining armor, that knight being one god in particular, Remo. She fell deeply in love with him the moment she saw him, and from that day she has been fully obsessive over him. Before Earth was banished, she used to use the bulk of her power to cause the tides, just to get Remo's attention. Remo has always found her really creepy and has done his darndest to avoid her, much to her dismay. When she finally got it through her head that she didn't have a chance with him, she moved on to Solar, who turned her down much more harshly and directly. This having deeply hurt her, Mile comforted her, which made her fall in love with her next. When she was rejected once again, she went back to harassing Remo. Now that she isn't allowed to interact with him anymore, she sits on the moon, broken-hearted, longing for the love of her life. She seriously needs to find some self-worth. Our sister planet, Venus, is special in that it is a rocky planet, yet has such a thick atmosphere that it has a separate god for it, bringing the planet total to 3 gods. Kendall is quite a secretive person, never sharing much about themselves. It's not that they have anything to hide, they just don't like to talk about themselves. They, however, always seem to be in everybody's business. They love to give unsolicited advice to people, but especially to Volca, who they think spends too much time thinking about their appearance. Kendall believes that Volca does this out of insecurity and tries to help them be more confident, but Volca doesn't have problems with their self-image. They change their appearance constantly simply because they're indecisive. They try new looks and aesthetics, even if they do always eventually just go back to the standard. They obviously like the standard best, but they can't just leave it alone. Volca is not this way only about fashion, but about mostly everything. They often get very obsessive over simple choices, finding them very overwhelming. Retro is lazy. Not much more to him. He spends a lot of his time either asleep or just lounging about. He gets very frustrated when he has to actually work. One thing that he's very good at, though, is getting Volca to calm down, inviting them to chill with him. Crow thinks herself to be an evil mastermind, but is far from it. What she calls her evil schemes are really just harmless pranks on others that could potentially maybe ruin their day, but not do much more. Her ultimate goal is to get everybody to fear and respect her, so that she may rule the solar system. Whatever that means. In reality, everybody finds her rather cute, albeit annoying, but nobody wants to burst her bubble. Zilbu, her planet mate, acts as her lackey. He seems to actually have bought into the whole evil mastermind thing, and caters to her every whim, hoping to one day rule by her side. Crow has every opportunity to abuse this power and use Zilbu, but she's awfully respectful for somebody who is allegedly evil, and makes sure that Zilbu is also happy. Zilbu mostly only speaks when he has a suggestion to make, because Crow really likes to give long monologues, and he doesn't want to interrupt her since he really enjoys listening to them. He's very quick on his feet, being able to outrun even Desmond, and by a good amount. This has been tested multiple times. He is also quite strong, and he uses this strength to carry Crow around, as her stubby build doesn't allow her much speed. The sun, the center of the solar system, the giver of life. Well, that would be Tovish, but without the sun life would be pretty difficult. The sun is ruled by Solar, and as is customary, the system was named after the star god. Solar is pretty much the manager of the solar system. Back when meetings were still a thing about 5 million years ago, before the restrictions, Solar would organize the events and lead the meetings. Oftentimes when somebody had a concern, they would go to Solar, who would take care of it. They are very uptight and strict, and make sure that everything runs smoothly and efficiently, even if not everybody is satisfied with the way things are. Solar does care about others' feelings, and takes them into consideration, but they prioritize efficiency. Since the restrictions, managing has gotten harder, and the system has become more chaotic. The higher forces, the rulers of all gods, are comprised of the brothers Tovish, god of life itself, and Dot, god of death itself. These two were the first gods to have ever existed, and... Oh? Oh shit, they found me!